welcome back to my garden. This week I've been wondering what I was going to make my film about it, and I didn't really have any ideas, and then sadly I got some news today from a friend, and I thought, well, I might as well talk about Ian, a sort of homage, because the news that I got from his wife is that Ian had passed away. He was at peace, at rest. And I suppose I need to tell you a little bit about the man. He was one of the very first people I met when I moved to Peru from London. And it turned out he was on a new tour of duty, so to speak, at the school where I worked. He'd worked for many years at another British school in Lima. And he liked a beer, and he was a raconteur, second to none. So we soon got on very well. His wife was an amazing, or she is, an amazing character, Elizabeth, Glaswegian, very fiery, feisty Scottish lady. Great company. And early on, actually, we had a sort of business transaction, and he was renting an apartment as part of the deal as an expatriate teacher, but another one had become available, and it really was just what he fancied. So he said, well, why don't you take over mine? And in the end, it was the right decision. The apartment that he and Elizabeth were going to stay in really was better suited to me, and the place where they ended up staying was just perfect for them. So that's kind of how we met, and things went from there. And as I say, he was a real colourful teller of amazing tales, loved a drink, loved some good food, a real aficionado of the bullfights, which admittedly isn't everybody's cup of tea, but over the years we became really, really good friends. And one of the things that sort of cemented that was the place where they moved was kind of halfway between our school, which was in the sort of foothills, and the district Miraflores, by more on the coast. And my good friend Robert and I, we would often stop there on the way back from our favourite post-work haunt on a Friday afternoon. And we'd stop at Ian's, sort of invite us back. Why don't we get something to eat at mine? And we'd sort of try and make excuses, but they wouldn't stick. And you knew that once you were through that door, you weren't going anywhere fast. He was a terrific host. He had at the time this amazing technology, a sort of a device where you'd put in 1,000 CDs, and it would just like a slide projector, and it would select CDs for you and play. And so we'd go and have these music and drinking sessions, and inevitably we'd have just one more. And before you knew it, it was 3 o'clock in the morning and no one was going anywhere, but he had a large sofa, and so we'd sort of pick things up again on Saturday morning. One of the things that I remember most about Ian was actually on the professional side. And I'm not saying he was necessarily the most I don't want to use the word professional, but the most polished of teachers. But he had a style, he got on well with the kids. He was a computer science teacher, although I always wondered just how much he actually knew about computers. If he sort of knew just enough to stay ahead of the kids and had very good teaching strategies to get them to teach themselves. But it seemed to work. And at any rate, he did give me 2 fantastic pieces of advice. The first was about working as an expatriate teacher in general. So there's just one rule you need to live by, because it was a wild life, and there's no getting away from it. Peru in the early 90s, it had just come out of a civil war. The good times were starting to roll. The quadruple digit inflation was over. People had money in their pocket. There were a lot of people who'd been there during the civil war and during the multiple 1,000% inflation, and they were a wild crowd. And this was Peru we're talking about. And Ian was one of those. He went back to the late 80s, and so he said, "Look, you're going to have a wild time. You're going to it's the rock and roll lifestyle. You'll be living the life of a football player or a movie star, just that you don't need any particular talent. You just need to work at the school." I said, "Fair enough." He said, "But there's one rule you've got to live by." And it was a good piece of advice that probably would go for anybody in any job. You can get away with most things, but there's one thing that you really can never get away with, and that is making someone else do your job. Sooner or later, that will find you out. So you're going to go out on the town and big it up, fine. But you show up the next day, you do your job solidly, no complaints, don't create problems for other people, don't make people cover your lessons calling in a sickie, don't come in sloppily and create havoc that means the management have to pick up the pieces. No, you do your job solidly, professionally, and everyone will be fine. And the other piece of advice he got was from perhaps his brother or a cousin who I think was a judge or a magistrate. And the advice was basically this: imagine you're a traffic officer and you stop someone for speeding or a minor infraction. He said, "Look, at this point, you can give them a speech or you can give them a fine. But what you mustn't do is give them the speech and then the fine. Because then you're just wasting their time. If you're going to make your point by fining someone in a very impersonal, polite way, just give the fine. If you're going to give them the speech because you think they'll learn from it, well, it's because you believe that will work, and then there's no need for any further action." And as a teacher, this was very true. If you were in a situation where you needed to punish a child, that wasn't the time to give them a moralizing speech or an inspirational speech. The time to give them the speech was when they were going to listen to it, and then that would be closure and you would move on. And I think that was good advice, and perhaps can be adapted to many, many other areas. So Ian, fantastic character, and eventually, I left Peru after 8 years and moved to Brazil. We've stayed vaguely in touch. I know he had a very, very, very serious bout of ill health, which maybe it was throat cancer, but it was something of that nature, something horrible. And he'd survived, and later on there were photographs of him and Elizabeth on holiday in Mexico or somewhere. And that's not how I'm going to remember Ian. And I think, as I say, he did recover, and he had some good years after some difficult ones. I mean, the way I'm going to remember Ian are those Friday afternoons or sometimes it was Tuesday afternoon, where we'd finish work and we'd go out for a late ceviche. and boy, he loved his ceviche. And if you lived in Peru, and you were partial to seafood, well, of course you would love ceviche. But really was the most, for me, nothing quite like it. It is the most amazing food. And those sessions, unforgettable. And so here we are. I mean, I'm speaking to you out there, and there will be perhaps a handful, but probably far fewer of you who know who Ian is. And I didn't really think about this. I'm sure I could have told a better story or painted a more detailed portrait, even in a short time. But it doesn't matter. A lot of the stories, of course, I have to leave out, simply because they are, frankly, ones that involve illegal activities. So we're not going to be talking about that, and that's not any way to remember the recently departed. The way to remember Ian was he lived life to the absolute fullest. And if you were his friend, he would stand by you, come what may. And he had a good heart. He was generous, and all over the world there will be people sad, but if the initial look on Facebook is anything to go by, people will be sad but with wonderful memories. And is there any better way to live your life? Well, maybe, but that should surely be part of it. So that's it. If you want some advice, I mean, if you come to my videos for advice, perhaps there's some advice there. Don't. But occasionally there is good advice here, and Ian's advice, don't get other people to do your job. Always show up to your responsibilities and do what needs to be done without cause for complaint. That's good advice. And in situations where you have some sort of authority, give people the speech and the flowery words, or give them the hard facts and the brutal punchline, but don't give them both. I'm not feeling sad. I'm feeling grateful that, Ian was my friend. We shared time together. My life has been all the richer for it. So rest in peace, Ian. Otherwise, I trust your lives are filled with joy, that you don't have anything too bad or weighing heavily on you. And if you do, find the goods buried in there somewhere. And otherwise, until next week, from a sunny Brazil,